What is a 1099 RIA model? That is today's question on the Transition to RIA question and answer series. It is episode number 138. Hi, I'm Brad Wales with Transition to RIA, where we help you understand everything there is to know about why and how to transition your practice to the RIA model. If you're not already there, if you start out by heading on over to transitiontoria.com, you can find all the resources we make available from this entire series in video format, podcast format. There's articles, there's white papers, there's a new vendor profile series as well. All kinds of things to help you better understand the RIA model. Again, transitiontoria.com. Okay, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about a 1099 RIA model. Now, to be certain, that's not really terminology that's used in the marketplace. You don't typically hear someone say, I'm looking for a 1099 RIA model. But what we're going to be talking about today, a lot of advisors are looking for, or they do learn more about it and find it to be an attractive and good fit for their practice. So we're going to kind of go over what, in this episode, I'm going to refer to as that 1099 RIA model. So as the backstory to build up to that, keep in mind, and something I talk about often, there are three main pathways you could take into the RIA model. I help advisors down all three of those. They all have pros and cons that you want to understand. It's not to say that one path is just generally better than any of the other paths. Ultimately, your job is to understand how they all work and to figure out which path is best for you and your practice. But as a reminder, those three pathways are, and I'm going to do this high level, but on one end of the spectrum is you start your own RIA and you build out all the necessary solution providers around it. On the other end of the spectrum is you join an existing RIA platform. And as we're going to talk about today, there's all kinds of different flavors of that out there, but that join an RIA is on the other end of the spectrum. And then there's a flavor in the middle, which is a little bit of a mix of the two, where you have your own RIA, but you're still leaning on a single provider for most of the needed resources. So this episode is focused on that join in RIA side of the spectrum. But I would tell you from hundreds of conversations with advisors, that is often misunderstood. And so when I walk advisors and teams through these three pathways and I talk about joining an RIA, or sometimes I like to refer to it as an RIA platform so they don't have a misconception on it, I'm not referring to, just some RIA down the street that has an empty desk in the corner that would love to have you come sit in that desk. That RIA probably does exist, and that desk probably does exist, and they'd love to have you maybe come sit in it. And so if that's a fit and you're aware of that team, by all means, have at it and explore that as a potential option. What I'm talking about here, in particular in the 1099 model, are more called institutional-sized platforms that were built for this specific exact purpose to service advisors, not just because they have extra capacity they're trying to fill in, but to give you an idea of the flavors of that join an RIA or join an RIA platform and where 1099 falls in that. To be certain, there are some RIAs you could join that as part of that, you are forced to sell your practice to them. Now, that might be very appealing to you if you are at the point in your career that you need your succession event to occur and you're selling your practice. There's nothing wrong with that, assuming that's where you are and that's a good fit for you. But there are platforms that say, hey, you have to sell your practice. But as we're going to talk about, again, that's not all platforms or all offerings. That's some. And I will hear advisors sometimes say, well, have you thought about joining an RIA? And the first thing they say is, yeah, but I don't want to sell my practice yet. And it's like, okay, understood, but just know that exists. And that might be something you'll find attractive in 10, 15, 20 years. But that's not the only thing that exists in that kind of join an RIA bucket. But just, for example, there's some that require that you sell it to them. There's others that require, whether you sell it to them or you're just joining that, you became a W-2 employee advisor of their firm. For some advisors, that's attractive. Others, that's not attractive. There's others that you join and you must use their brand, and they would position that as a good thing because, hey, look at all this brand recognition we maybe have in the marketplace, but that may or may not be attractive to you. There are others that if you join them, you must essentially turn over your investment management to them. Some of you might be looking for that. Some of you might be looking to take that off your plate, and that's a good fit. Others say, no, I'm either already doing it myself or already have, essentially third-party solutions that I use, and I want to continue doing that. But that flavor exists out there. And then another flavor, and again, I'm just giving you the build-up here, is that 1099 model. That's what we're going to dive in today. But my point of that whole backstory is to just recognize not only are there different pathways into the model, but of that joint RIA, there's multiple different flavors. So if you only take the time to research one flavor or two, or talk to one RIA, that might ultimately be a good fit for you, whatever that solution is. But don't make any assumptions that, oh, that's how all of the options are. That's just their particular flavor that they're positioning for you to consider. So regarding the 1099 model, so how does that typically work? When in that case, these are mostly firms. Again, this is not the firm that just has the empty desk and the extra capacity. These are firms that were started from the beginning to say, hey, advisors, we realize many of you are looking at the RIA model. We realize many of you want a lot of the advantages of the RIA model, which I talk about frequently in these episodes, the flexibility advantages, the economic advantages. But as I note, that comes with additional responsibilities. And so, hey, advisors, some of you might not want to have to handle the compliance function yourself, or might not want to have to integrate and maintain the tech stack yourself, or might not want to manage the client fee billing yourself. Now, those are all doable to the degree it makes sense for you to go down the pathway of your own RIA, and you just need to put the right solutions in place to solve for all of those things. But there are some advisors that simply say, look, I just don't desire to do any of that, and whatever additional upside I'd perhaps have from having my own RIA doesn't outweigh those additional responsibilities. So if there's a way to outsource that to someone else, that would be great. And so that's what these 1099 models, if you will, have kind of been built out to essentially be your infrastructure partner, doing a lot of the behind the scenes, non-client facing tasks for you. And so a couple of the benefits of that model, of the flavor I'm describing here, is that you retain 100% ownership of your practice. You are not selling your practice to these firms. Again, while technically you're falling under their ADV, think of them more as an infrastructure partner providing you certain services to help you more efficiently run your practice. So you are retaining 100% ownership of your firm in this type of model. Another benefit with these common models is that you will use your own brand. You will go out there and establish, to the degree you don't already have one, if you're like a wirehouse firm, or if you're independent broker-dealer and you've already established a brand, you will either start or continue to use your own brand and how you market your services. Again, they're essentially an infrastructure partner behind the scenes. The client-facing parts of it, the brand, that is all yours to build and essentially monetize over time. Another benefit of the 1099 is that you control, this is by nature of being 1099, sometimes folks refer to as independent contractor. Because you're 1099, you are controlling your local expenses. Now, and I did a whole separate episode on that if you want to check it out, of why it's beneficial to control your local expenses. But there are a lot of benefits to that, because you get to decide how to move those economic levers, whether it's the office footprint you have and how extravagant or lean that is, or the makeup of your team and how big of a team or small of a team you have, or who does what. And you get to manage your cost centers there that will go into your entire practice. And that gives you a lot of ability to control what ultimately flows to you at the bottom line. So that's a big benefit of any 1099 model out there. But particularly in the RIA space, where you have that and you say, okay, hey, great, 1099 model, you're going to provide me with all these things that, again, it's a lot of times behind the scenes stuff. I'm still going to be kind of the forward-facing element of this with my clients, with my team, with my office, and I will cover all of those expenses. And more importantly, I get to control those expenses myself. So that is another big benefit of that 1099 model, is you are controlling your local expenses. And then a key part of these 1099 models, and I certainly encourage you to make sure this is part of any type of firm you would join if this is where you are in your career, is that they say, hey, we're basically a free agent model, meaning we would love, this is the RIA speaking, the 1099 RIA model, we would love to have you come join our platform, and here's all the wonderful things we do for you. Here's how we price that out. You'll keep ownership, like I talked about. You use your own brand. But importantly, advisor team, you're not going to be forced to sign something that says, hey, if you ever want to leave, you have some non-solicit or a non-compete or anything like that. We treat you as a free agent, meaning we know you have the ability to leave. You could go in a different direction. You could go to one of our competitors in the 1099 RIA model, or you could leave maybe because you want to start your own RIA at that point. And so our objective as that RIA 1099 model is to provide you with so much value and keep you so satisfied that you simply say, I can't do better in any other approach, and it makes sense for me to stay here in this model. Now, that's, of course, what all firms should be doing. Even the W-2, the wirehouses, all firms should be treating their advisors and teams like that to say, hey, we're not going to put up artificial guardrails with deferred comp handcuffs or non-solicitation agreements. We should be trying to earn your business to make you want to stay. Now, there's obviously a lot of firms don't view it that way. Now, to be fair, if you reach a point in your career and you sell your practice to someone, another RIA, it is very fair, reasonable, and expected that they will have you sign something that basically says, hey, you are selling your practice to us. You can't just, and we're paying you a lot of money. You can't just leave 2 years from now and try to go in a different direction and take your clients with you. And that's fair, right? That's the transaction. You would want that same arrangement if you were buying a practice, if you are giving money and economic benefit to someone for that practice. They're essentially handing that off, and it's fair to have them sign something that they won't solicit or compete with you going forward. But to the degree you're not going into an offer where you're selling your practice, you will want that free agent, not only optionality, because you never know where your practice might evolve to 5, 10, 15 years from now, but you also want that mentality of the firm that they know you're a free agent. They know they have to continuously work hard because you could leave, because they haven't tied you up with deferred comp handcuffs that make it harder for you to leave, whether economically or mentally. They have to earn your business every single day. So that's a big benefit of these 1099 RIA models as well. And then they would point out too, and this is fair, part of their value prop is they just will have way more scale than you will ever have individually. Because this is their model and they're bringing a lot of advisors, a lot of teams onto that, they ultimately have more assets on the platform. They arguably can get either better terms, pricing, or service from the custodians that are used. They can typically get better pricing from the technology vendors that are used, all because of that scale. So there is a lot of benefit to saying, hey, yes, hey, that's great, you're going to do all that for me, but because of your scale, you can also help essentially keep my economics as the advisor, the team better as well. And that typically gets passed along to you with those better economics, and it can be very appealing, again, for the right situation. So that's not all of the benefits of the 1099 model, but I just wanted to lay out some of the main ones so you know that that is out there. Now, that's, again, not going to be a fit for everyone, but I just have a lot of advisors and teams that either don't even know it's out there or they only talk to one solution and they just assume that's how all of these options work. So something to keep in mind there. And then, like I said, the main kind of takeaway of who this appeals to is, again, typically advisors that say, hey, I want all those benefits. I don't want to do a lot of that infrastructure, maybe some of the administrative compliance type stuff. And to the degree that has to be done by someone, either I piece the solutions together or people on my team do things. If I can outsource that to a single vendor, for many advisors and teams, that can be quite appealing. And I always, that's why I walk advisors through all three paths. A lot of advisors and teams, when they reach out to me, they come in thinking they would only want their own RIA. And to be fair, that's the path they stay on, and it makes sense for them to go down that path. But I say, well, let's at least understand how these other options work. In many advisor teams, after learning about this 1099 RIA model and some of the good solutions out there, there's good and bad solutions. That's an important part, is to know which the good ones are, and I can help you with that, is to look at that, and that might be something appealing to you as well. But the final thought on that, keep in mind, that is a a two-way street, if you will. So not only are these 1099 RIA models trying to build out an attractive offering for you, an attractive value prop and pricing to want you to come use their services, it also still needs to be a fit for them as well. So clearly they're going to do background, make sure the caliber of advisor you are, what your background is, what size practice you have. Most of them have minimum sizes and certain kind of requirements, but it also needs to be a fit. And so an example, this is kind of an extreme example of where no matter how attractive that might be to you, and no matter how much you want to use that 1099 RIA model, if you said, hey, not only do I have my advisory practice and here it is, and I want to keep growing that, but I also plan on starting a hedge fund on the side. And here's what I'm going to do with that. That's generally a step too far for these 1099 RIA models. They say, okay, hey, if you want to do all that, that's fine. That's going to get too far out of our kind of wheelhouse of the types of advisors and teams that we're prepared and able to support. So you probably really need to have your own RIA at that point, so you have the optionality to do whatever it is you want to do with that hedge fund and invest however you want to invest with whatever clients you want to have. So there are some scenarios, and again, that's a bit of an extreme one, but there are some scenarios where just because you find something attractive, it might not be a fit for them. And that's a big thing where I can help you understand is, one, how does this model work to begin with? Two, which of these solution providers might be a fit for your practice? And then, by the way, is your practice a fit for them? Again, sometimes that's as simple as you're not large enough, perhaps, practice for whatever their minimums are, so it's just not going to be a fit based on that alone. Or one of these more kind of logistical constraints, again, the extreme example with the hedge fund. So like I said, my name is Brad Wales with Transition to RIA, and this is the type of thing I help advisors with all day long, is saying, okay, what does your practice look like now? What would it look like in the RIA model? By the way, let's make sure you understand all the ways, the pathways you could go into the model. Let's make sure you understand the pros and cons of each of those. And then after we kind of work out which direction you might want to lean in or need to lean in, again, based on your circumstances, then who are all the solution providers you will ultimately need to lean on to be able to go down that pathway. Helping you sort through all of that is a big part of my value proposition. Happy to have that conversation with you as well. But first things first, as I said, head on over to transitiontoria.com, where you can find this entire series in video format, podcast format. There's articles, there's white papers, there's the new vendor profile series. Check it all out. But at the top of every page is a contact link. Just click on that and you can instantly and easily schedule time to have a one-on-one conversation with me. Whether you want to talk about today's topic or anything else RIA related, I'm happy to have that conversation with you. Again, transitiontoria.com. And with that, hope you found value in today's episode, and I'll see you in the next one.